I want to start with, of course, talking about this wonderful memoir you've written, but I want to start sort of specifically with the idea of your career and the long career you had especially in the U.S. Senate, and for so many of us in Michigan, you are synonymous with the word senator. You're the first person I ever remember associating with that word, and that says a lot, I think, about how long you did the job and how much of an impression you made in that job. So I want to go back, though, to your decision to do that job. I mean, you were the president of the Detroit City Council, and then you decided you wanted to be a U.S. senator. What was it about the Senate that attracted you to run that year?
Well, a number of things, actually. First of all, I had to get the permission, support of family. That's always important. Mm-hmm. But secondly, it was my experience in Detroit, actually, which led to a decision that I should try to bring a point of view that I had to Washington. And that point of view was that the government has got elected officials have got to be responsive to the public, to their people. They don't always agree with the majority of their people. A good elected official sometimes is going to do some things which is unpopular, as a matter of fact. But in his or her judgment, it's for the common good, and it's necessary, and it's his obligation or her obligation, I believe, to do what he or she believes in conscience is best for his city or for his state or his country. And so what I found when I was in local government in Detroit is that too often the federal bureaucracy would just, we'd be told by elected officials, well, we can't do much for you. You got 10,000 vacant HUD houses sitting there vacant in your neighborhood, maintained by HUD as eyesores. They're not being boarded up. They're not being taken care of. There they sit, helping to destroy my town's neighborhoods. And when I went to my elected officials, too often I was told, well, the problem isn't with us, it's with the bureaucracy. They're handling this. This is a federal agency decision. And so I actually went to Washington believing that Congress should have the obligation of overriding regulations by federal agencies. It was actually part of my platform. It was called legislative veto, mm-hmm. Kind of an obscure thought in a way, but I believed in it because of our very disastrous experience with HUD in Detroit. And so that kind of was one of the driving forces. And it was also, of course, a lot of other things I wanted to try to do for my state. A lot of beliefs that I have in people being heard, listened to, respected, and considered fully when it comes to a decision making.
And so you get to Washington, and as I say, you have an incredible and very long career there that takes you, it seems like, to lots of different ideas and places. But talk about those early years in Washington. What frames your work, and kind of what frames your thinking about the role once you have it?
Well, I focused on two things right away. One was the oversight responsibility, which I've just tried to describe. And I believe Congress has the responsibility, and it's one of its major responsibilities, to oversee the operations of the federal bureaucracy and to correct things that are happening in society which shouldn't happen. In other words, we decided to be part of an investigative effort of government to investigate both the bureaucracy's shortfalls and also the shortfalls in the private sector. And so I was appointed head of a subcommittee right away that was doing investigation and oversight, and later on would spend about 10 years as chairman of the major permanent subcommittee on investigations. The other thing I wanted to do was to focus on an area that I knew very little about, and that's the military. That's the security of our country and how the military operated, and to learn more about something I had not experienced personally because I had never served. And I wanted to fill in that major gap and to really understand the importance of the military, where it may be wasteful, for instance, and that also occurred in the military. But also I also gained a huge respect for our military leadership and the people who serve us. Frankly, I gained a lot more respect for some of our military leaders who are under the control of civilians than I did for some of their civilian leaders, to be blunt about it. Some of the presidents I did not think were great leaders at all, including the second George Bush. He's a nice guy, but not a great leader in a lot of ways. I came to have great respect for the leadership, the training, the insights, the thoughtfulness, the respect that our leaders have for the men and women they lead, and their families, which is also very important, but also to help the public understand that we've got to work together as a people, and the military leadership understands the importance of their units, of their combat unit, that they're brothers and sisters together. And so the idea that a military leader would denigrate, would be a racist or a bigot or have a problem with females or with ethnic origins, the idea that could take place in the military is anathema to the idea that you're there together.
And you develop an incredible expertise on the military. While you're in the Senate, you also develop some real expertise on foreign relations and do a lot of important work in that realm. Tell us how that developed, what interested you in that realm.
Well, it's when you decide whether or not to send people to war or authorize it, you're making the most important decision that you can make. There is no more significant decision than putting our men and women at risk and doing what we have to call upon their families to do. And so when you finally, gain that understanding, you have to take it seriously. We did a lot of traveling all over the world. We met with a lot of leaders. As a matter of fact, Joe Biden gave us one of our early lessons in the importance of meeting with foreign leaders and having coalitions with allies. The idea that we would have a president like this last president of ours, who hopefully is the last president like him. Trump divided people. He divided us from our allies. And my gosh, if we're going to be in a more secure world, you got to work with allies and people who have similar points of view, who believe in democratic government, hopefully, then there's threats to that which have taken place.
Did you ever imagine that we would see in our time something like we saw on January 6th, where the building where you worked for decades in Washington was literally under attack from Americans who wanted to disrupt the process of certifying, our every 4-year presidential election? I mean, it's still, just describing it is kind of surreal to me. But I wonder, as somebody who spent so much time in that building, how that visited with you.
Well, I was obviously disgusted, distraught, but not totally surprised. There's some really crazy people out here who are racist, who will destroy things they don't like. Thankfully, it's not a big number, but they're there, and we have to protect ourselves against them in many ways by looking at our own shortfalls and seeing where each of us can be more open to friendships and other people, where we can cross lines which maybe haven't been crossed before to make us a stronger community. We can always do that. But I wasn't surprised totally that those kind of people exist. And I also was not surprised when they lost, because there's some real strengths that this country has that we've proven over the years. And we've got to stand for those strengths in the world. And one of the things that this new president is so strong at is working with other countries to rebuild the values that internationally we've got to stand for if the world itself is going to be safer.